I'm gonna love you.
Hey, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge, everyone. Today was round 3 of the Tradewise Gibraltar Masters. We're going to continue to look at Hikaru Nakamura's games and see if he can continue his quest for a 4th straight Gibraltar Masters. He's actually already won 4 already, but not in a row. So this will be his 4th straight in a row, and it would give him 5 total, which is absolutely amazing. So let's go ahead and see what transpired in round 3 for him. Caro-Kann. He's playing against Federico Perez Ponsa. He's an Argentinian grandmaster. It's interesting that he played the Caro-Kann today when yesterday he faced the Caro-Kann against GM Valentina. But this here is a little bit different though. This is the 2 knights Caro-Kann, 2 knights attack Caro-Kann variation. Black gives up the bishop quickly for the knight and plays e6, establishing a triangle pawn structure. The pawn structure is very solid. Black's position is very solid and hard to break down. But at some point, he will have to play either e5 or c5 in order to free his position up so he won't be cramped and be smothered to death, basically. Hikaru plays g6. He's getting ready to fianchetto his bishop on g7. That'd be a great diagonal. He has the long diagonal there, and it's open at this point. Rook d1 to support a potential pawn push. But black plays d4, which has to be dealt with immediately. The knight goes back to b1, which is a very awkward move, especially when the d2 square still has his pawn there. It's not like the knight can reroute to d2 real fast. Maybe d2 then to b3, but something like this there, or maybe even here first. Let me get rid of these arrows. Here first, and then here. But so that's kind of awkward there. Knight e7. Finally d3. c5. Expanding and solidifying his center. a4. Knight c6. Castles. a6. Getting ready to play b5 and expand on the queen side. e5 hits the bishop. The bishop goes back to d2. Rook b8 again is going for setting up the pawn push on the queen side. Rook f2 looks like a wasted tempo, but it's for the better though. It's for the good because white wants to play on the king side, so he wants to get f4 in while black is playing on the queen side. If you take a look at the pawn structure here in the center, black's pawns is pointing toward the queen side, so that's the direction he should play in, whereas white's pawns are locked and pointing towards the king side. And so that's kind of like a general rule of which side of the board you should play on, and these players are following that general principle there. b5, exchange here. White gets his f4 in. Pin on the bishop there. Queen attacks the bishop. Bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, knight e5. So black is a little weak on the dark squares here, but white can't really exploit it. And there's a saying that goes like, you're only as weak as you're only as weak as your opponent can exploit it, or something like that. Basically, if your opponent can't exploit your weaknesses, then they're not really weaknesses, is what the saying means. Rook F1, Knight C6. You have the loaded gun battery here. White is trying to immobilize Black's kingside here, put pressure on that F7 square, and prevent Black from pushing his F pawn as well. B4 hits the knight. The knight goes back to B1 for like the third time in this game, seems like. B3, another expanding move here. If you just look at the pieces here, Black has so much more space. Even though the material is the same, Black has way more space. Black's pieces are just more active and just better. White's knight is on B1 again. Black's bishop is on E2, and just looking at the pawns there on D3 and C4, it's biting granite, as people like to say. So, and then Black's knights are ready to jump all into Black's position even more. So Black is just way more active than White is. Even though White had the loaded gun there, it wasn't really even doing anything at the moment. So, now that the queen moved off the file, Black plays F6. Queen D6. Knight A3. Black's knight plays an awesome move here, Knight C2. White does not want to take that knight because then he'll have a pawn just one square away from promotion with the rook to follow up. Knight B5. Queen E7. Let's continue on with the game here. Knight E3. Great move here. The knight is on an awesome outpost deep into enemy territory. Knight A3 again. White kind of seems like he's lost his plan. You know, he doesn't have a real solid plan right now. And Black is just jumping all over him. Rook E1. King H8. Bishop F1, Rook E8, Knight B1, F5. Really, the last 10 moves or so has just been Black maneuvering his pieces to better positions. They've all been like I call them piece builders or position builders. They've all just been to get his pieces on the most active squares and get them to the best squares possible. Knight D2. Queen C7 is an indirect pin on White's queen and king, because if White trades queens at this point, it's just better for Black. So Hikaru is okay with the queen trade at this point. King G1 gets out of the pin. F4. Queen H4 was played in the game, but if the rook took the pawn, then you would have Knight D3, which hits both rooks. And don't forget, the queen is undefended. So then you would have bishop takes D3, and then rook takes rook. So at the end of that, Black would have won in exchange the rook for the knight. So White can't take that pawn there. Plays H4 instead. Queen H4. Rook F8. Bishop E2. Now the queen goes to A5 and attacks the knight on D2. There's another saying that goes, loose pieces drop off. So he's attacking the undefended knight on d2. White attacks the undefended knight on e5. Takes. King g8 because he was in check. Rook b1 protects the undefended pawn that was on b2. Now black plays queen c2, hits the rook and pawn. Rook goes to f1. Knight takes. Bishop takes, so black wins an exchange there. Queen c1. Queen takes c5 because white's really only plan at this point is to try to push the c pawn. f3. g3. It would have been a huge mistake to take the pawn there. Queen e3. This is my favorite move of the game. Queen e3 exclam. Because this move right here kind of reminds me of like a glue stick. Because now the king and the rook are like stuck like glue. Because black has the g2 square covered. So if the king ever moves, then he's going to lose the rook. So really, like, black's king is kind of frozen right now. So then they play on the wing here. King h7 gets out of the pin because black's rook was pinned to his king. Queen g5, attacking the queen. But then he couldn't even take it, though. He played queen c5 here. If he would have took the queen, then you have d takes queen, and that's just a total disaster for white. You've got a big pawn roller push going on here with the f and e pawns, and the rook on a7 is also coming to a1, so that would just be an immediate loss. So white couldn't even take the queen on e3 there. He plays queen c5, hitting the rook on a7, and trying to hit the rook on f8 as well. And then black just gives up the rook on f8 if white wants it, because he's going for mate himself. White plays queen e7. King protects the rook. Now you have a number of checks because white is just left to checks at this point. Rook f7. And then at this point here, white just resigns. He's throwing the towel at this point. Play might have continued with queen e5 check. And then once the king goes to h7, there's no more checks for white. White's out of checks. So then you have queen g5 trying to take the powerful queen off the board to prevent any type of checkmates. Then you would have queen e2, a devastating move, because you would have rook takes queen, pawn takes rook, and now don't forget the bishop is pinned. The bishop is hit 3 times. The bishop is hit 3 times here with the rook on f7, a1, and the pawn as well. And so it would be just lights out. So this was a good win for Nakamura, considering he played the game yesterday that lasted over 7 hours. It was like 135 moves. So this was a good victory for Nakamura. He's tied for the lead with 3 points. It's like a 7-way tie for first place with 3 points. The 2 other heavy hitters in this tournament, Levon Aronian is a half-point back with 2.5. Maxime Legrave is a half-point back with 2.5. So don't count those guys out. Stay on the lookout for those guys. And I just want to give a shout out to the young 12-year-old I.M. Pragananda. He played Nigel Short today, and he drew Nigel Short, and that was a great accomplishment and feat for him since he's only 12 years old. So it was kind of interesting to have one of the older competitors, Nigel Short, playing one of the youngest competitors. And both of them were prodigies. Nigel was a prodigy back in the day, and this kid is obviously a prodigy now. So it was a pretty good game. They drew today. And all right, that's it for round 3 recap. Stay tuned for round 4 tomorrow. And hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and please subscribe. All right, guys, until next time.